Good morning, everyone. Our topic is the evolution of school bullying, the transition of impacts on teenagers and societal dynamics. Here is our table of contents. I will start the introduction. For the definitions of bullying, bullying can be classified into two types. The first one is physical bullying. Any bullying that hurts someone's body and damages their perceptions. And the second one is cyberbullying, which is a form of bullying or harassment using economic means. Now, bullying has evolved into cyberbullying. 1 in 3 youth has experienced cyberbullying. Victims of cyberbullying are 2 to 3 times more likely to commit suicide. Bullying happens more frequently online than in person because the bully's beliefs is moral disengagement, and the bullies do not see the pain that victims have suffered. School is the major value for bullying. Schools often take one approach when dealing with students' cyberbullying case. Teachers want victims and bullies to make friends, but it is impossible as the victims will be blamed for reporting the case. Schools should rethink their approach when handling cyberbullying. To better understand bullying among adolescents in school setting, we adopted evolutionary perspective to pay attention to the forms of bullying and its impact on teenagers and society. I will pass the time to my groupmate to talk about the literature review.
Thank you. Now we'll guide you through the changes of bullying. Historically, bullying was defined as physical or verbal hostility. This is where a more powerful individual regularly harms someone they see as weaker. This could be anything from physical fight to name-calling. In recent decades, technological advancement and the rise of social media have transformed bullying. One major development has been cyberbullying, which involves harm inflicted through digital platforms like social media, text messages, and email. Unlike traditional bullying, cyberbullying is not confined to school grounds or specific times of day. It can occur anytime and is often anonymous, which makes it extremely challenging to address. Victims can be targeted at home, in what should be a safe place, through platforms like Instagram, Snapchat, or even gaming forums. This shift to digital space has made bullying more invasive and harder for parents and teachers to detect, contributing to an increase in anxiety, depression, and even suicidal thoughts among victims. To understand why cyberbullying has become so prevalent, we can look at social learning theory. This theory explains that individuals, especially adolescents, learn behaviors through observing and imitating others, particularly when these behaviors are reinforced. With the rise of social media, teenagers are constantly exposed to aggressive behaviors online, which are often rewarded with likes, shares, and comments. This online reinforcement can normalize harmful behaviors, encouraging others to imitate them. But it's not just about physical or verbal aggression anymore. We've also seen a shift towards more covert, relational forms of bullying. Instead of direct attacks, bullies now use social exclusion, rumor spreading, and manipulation. This type of bullying, called relational aggression, is particularly damaging because it targets the victim's social standing and emotional well-being, leading to feelings of isolation and helplessness. Now I'll pass to my groupmate to talk about traditional bullying.
This session will introduce the characteristics of bullying. Common forms of traditional bullying include physical, verbal, and social exclusion. Physical bullying is the most obvious type of bullying, and what many people think of when they imagine this kind of aggressive. Physical bullying is perpetrated by an individual or a group of individuals who are bigger or stronger than the individual being targeted, like hitting, kicking, spitting, which causes harm to a child's body or property. In contrast, verbal bullying involves using spoken or written words to insult or intimidate a victim. Study found that verbal bullying was the most common form of bullying. Boys experience this type of bullying at a slightly higher rate than girls, and most were bullied by their own friends. Verbal abuse include name-calling, mocking, racist comments, or sexual harassment, which cause psychological harm to the victim. Moreover, social exclusion involves action intended to harm a victim's reputation or relationship. Unlike more overt types of bullying, it is especially slight and insidious because it involves social manipulation, like excluding others from the group or getting others to ignore and exclude.
Now I would like to introduce you to the various forms of cyberbullying. Firstly, there is exclusion, which means being left out from the friends gathering or activities, including being excluded from online conversation. Harassment involves sending abusive or frightening message directed to the victim or the group, causing them distress. Another form is outing, which refers to posting sensitive or private or even embarrassing information about someone online without their consent. Teasing involves similar actions, but the aim is to harm the victim's reputation or the relationship. And then frapping, on the other hand, means logging into someone's social media account and impersonating them by posting the inappropriate content under their name. Trickery refers to gaining someone's trust and then exploiting it to share the private information online. Furthermore, trolling involves the internet user intentionally seeking to offend or to upset the individuals, often through the provocative comments and inflammatory content in order to elicit the reactions. And lastly, we have cyberstalking. It is the use of the internet to contact or to attempt to meet the young people for sexual purposes, or when the perpetrator used the electronic communications to stalk a victim. Overall, these forms of cyberbullying, while involving the technology, can have serious and lasting consequences for the victim.
Next, let me talk about the impact of bullying on teenagers. The mental health impact of bullying on teenagers is profound and multifaceted. According to 2000 study by Hawk, victims of bullying are at higher risk for mental problems such as depression and anxiety and suicidal ideation. There is data to support that teenagers who were victims of bullying were twice as likely to suffer from the depression and anxiety disorder, 2 to 9 times more likely to consider or attempt suicide compared to the non-bullying teenagers. This is because teenagers who experience bullying on a regular basis may internalize negative perception about themselves, which can result in a skewed self-concept. Next, cyberbullying tends to have more serious mental effects on teenagers than traditional bullying. It is because the anonymity and pervasive nature of cyberbullying deteriorate the psychological symptoms, because it causes victims to feel continuously targeted and powerless. To stop the abuse and eliminating the possibility of the victim running away from the cyberbullier. One research mentioned that cyberbullying shows higher risk of depression and suicidal thoughts in teenagers compared to traditional bullying. About 41% of cyberbullying victims experience depression, and 37% suffer from the anxiety.
Second, the recovery process of cyberbullying victims take longer than traditional bullying. In Bonfim-Bundy's ecological system theory, the development of individual is influenced by different ecological systems. Both traditional bullying and cyberbullying will cause negative effects on teenagers, but they have different extent based on the different ecological system they affect. Since traditional bullying usually happens directly and face-to-face at school, it primarily affects the microsystem of victims, which only affects the school and peer aspects. Victims of traditional bullying usually have a shorter recovery process than cyberbullying, because they can find some relief when they escape from school and peers, such as when they return home or enter a different social circle. However, cyberbullying extends its influence to the ecosystem, affecting the mass media aspect. For example, bullies may post video of victims being bullied on online platforms and social media. According to Langos 2015, the permanency and massive reach of cyberbullying amplify the humiliations of victims, intensifying their suffering. Victims of cyberbullying are much more difficult to find some relief since cyberbullying can happen at any place and time. The broader reach of victims' ecological system means that cyberbullying has a more extensive impact on their individual development. Since the impact of cyberbullying extends beyond the microsystem and affect the ecosystem, it would cause more lasting and complex trauma to the victims. Therefore, it requires a longer and more complicated recovery process for victims than traditional bullying.
Now I will talk the transition forms of bullying effects on society. First, cyberbullying is a more significant and more complex challenge for health than traditional bullying. Traditional bullying often ends once the victim is out of the proximity of the bully. Cyberbullying can have indefinite impact because it takes the form accessible digital content online. Therefore, even after victims leave the bullying incident behind, messages, images, or videos may continue to circulate, causing trauma relapses and prolonged psychological distress. Its persistent nature further exacerbates the incidence events of mental health problems, thus creating a need for healthcare interventions. Victims of cyberbullying are most likely to result in long-term mental health disorders, including anxiety, depression, and PTSD. Consequently, victims of cyberbullying seek mental health treatment due to prolonged psychological trauma. Moreover, the effects of cyberbullying on the victim's physical health are severe due to long-term exposure to stress. Indeed, several victims report recurring headaches, stomach aches, and sleeping problems. Such physical complaints often require medical attention and place an additional burden on the healthcare system. Doctors are confronted more often with situations in which they have to address not only the psychological complaints, but also the bodily ones of youngsters suffering from online harassment. The costs of cyberbullying to society in the long run are extensive. The victims of cyberbullying suffer from long-term effects that may remain with the victim through adulthood, such as disturbances in social relations, academic performance, and even career paths the victim chooses. The economic costs, too, bear significance with ever-growing health costs due to therapy, medication, and sometimes hospitalization. Untreated trauma may culminate in substance abuse or self-harm, increasing the burden on emergency health services. Now, I will give the time to the next classmate to talk about another impact.
The impact of cyberbullying potentially does more harm to social cohesion than traditional bullying. In traditional bullying, bystanders of bullying may feel guilty or powerless and can become desensitized to aggression, contributing to a culture of violence at school. Cyberbullying extends the scope and avenue of bullying. It enables animosity and violence to be expressed in impersonal and anonymous ways online, thus extending this culture of violence from school to mass media. This change has increased worries about how technology fuels social alienation and isolation through cyberbullying, causing damage to social cohesion. Let's discuss how cyberbullying affects the roles that adolescents play in the workplace and society when they grow up. In terms of fear of social media, victims may have trauma towards using digital media platforms. They may find it challenging to complete tasks given by their supervisor that involve interacting with clients or other collaborative parties via social platforms. In terms of isolation and withdrawal, victims may be overly defensive, which they fear that their privacy will be exposed to others. As a result, they may try to conceal as much personal information as possible, such as their social background or contact information. This can lead to individuals isolating themselves and minimizing their interactions with colleagues in order to protect themselves. However,
It limits their participation in team activities and hinders their ability to develop interpersonal relationships. In terms of communication barriers, victims may feel hard with expressing themselves in open discussions at the same time. Due to their heightened sensitivity towards potential negative reactions or feedback, they may be reluctant to share their ideas with colleagues. It may cause the disruption of team cohesion, affecting overall productivity and morale.
Even with all the negative impact my groupmates has discussed before in the urgent need to be addressed, however, there are some special features of cyberbullying that indeed does put forward the public awareness of bullying in general. The first feature is about the widespread element of social media in communications, and the second one is about documentation function of it. To be more specific, social media has been making cyberbullying clips and videos more accessible to the general public, not limited to only classmates of one school or people who are directly relevant to this incident. Even just like my groupmate has mentioned, it would hurt bystanders' feelings and social cohesions, but indeed, viewing those videos brought their attention to what is happening in bullying. Attention will bring discussions, and discussions may further lead to actions. As for the second one, social media ensures that there is documentation for police or school to trace who is one in connection with the event and who should be the one responsible for it. Sometimes, even when original post was deleted, there might be some available sources like screenshots stored by others that can be provided to authorities like police. Social media can make the process of targeting easier with evidence at hand, further increasing the deterrent on bullies. In conclusion, social media as a platform where cyberbullying usually happens will raise the public awareness and will provide documentation and evidence for further responsibility tracing and education.
So now, here arrives our conclusion part. To conclude, we have discussed the evolution and the root cause of social bullying, aiming to focus on its transition from traditional form of bullying to cyberbullying, and their respective impact on teenagers and society. We also stress that bullying is particularly prevalent among adolescents. We also discussed the two forms of bullying. Traditional school bullying is categorized by direct, face-to-face interaction, often privately, causing its complexity to detect or investigate. Physical aggression, verbal abuse, and social exclusion will be its prevalent characteristic. In contrast, cyberbullying is conducted through digital avenues and channels, making it more complex, sophisticated, and difficult to control, leading to several possible serious mental health issues for victims, for example depression and anxiety, which are more profound and severe compared to traditional bullying due to its anonymous and complexity nature. It entails its longer process for recovery at the same time. Due to its complexity, cyberbullying has escalated, becoming influential regarding the diminution of social cohesion in a healthcare system, causing long-term stress and physical health issues that pressurize and place extensive burden on healthcare system and their resources. Finally, we end our discussion on some of its positive implications of bullying. Despite its negative effects, the massive coverage and easy-reaching nature of cyberbullying can raise public awareness regarding school bullying, giving a great potential and possibility to prompt and facilitate societal action to address the issue. So it is our reference list. So thank you very much to listen to our presentation, and this is the end of our presentation. Thank you.